And welcome to the program that brings you new paradigms for a new world. Tell me your story, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And of course, as you know, we're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., 9 a.m. on Wednesdays. That is our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We have podcasts. They're on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. And we're on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. And by the way, we do have a live stream during those broadcast times, the four that I mentioned, at richarddugan.com. We also would like for you, if you can, to financially support the work that we're doing here. If you'd like to be a part of it on a financial level, we have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And then we ask you to participate in, I think, an interesting tradition that we should all get into, maybe ceremonially. Yes, it has something to do with what we're going to talk about today. We want you to go within and listen to that still small voice during this, the decade of perfect vision, where you listen to that still small voice. You just sit calmly, quietly. You don't have to be in any special position. Just take a minute, just a minute. Start with that and work your way up. We hope that you will do just that. With that, we are going to introduce our guest, very special guest today, who I'm just going to, normally we just jump right in here, but I'm going to list this: mother, writer, yogi, artist, teacher, mindfulness leader. She's a ceremonialist. She's a spiritual coach, and her name is Mara Bronzecombe. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's great to have you with us on a subject that I can't tell you how much I have been looking forward to talking to you about this.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
We're talking about ritual as a remedy, and that implies, maybe doesn't just imply, maybe it says it directly, has to do with the process of healing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that we can certainly look at many cultures and civilizations who have incorporated literally into their lifestyle various ceremonies. Mm-hmm. There are certain things that we in the West, who don't really have those well-known rituals and ceremonies per se, but we still do them. We don't necessarily call them rituals. Mm-hmm. Okay, for example, some would say, well, I gotta get up and do my morning ritual. Okay, I got to get out of bed, and then I got to, do this and that and the other thing, and then I go off to work, and then I come home and I have my evening ritual, and so forth and so on. Those aren't the rituals we're talking about, though. Are they necessarily? I mean, when you're talking about as a remedy, and again, this isn't part of the title, if you will, or the subtitle for that matter, but it has to do with it embodies the practices for soul care. When I was going through some challenges recently, Mara, mm-hmm. I was told that above all else, not to the exclusion of anything else, but above all else, I needed to take care of me. Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Mm-hmm. Yes, essentially, and to take care with a consciousness that will allow you to embrace the present moment, that will allow you to be really in touch with, even as you were talking at the beginning of the show, of that quiet voice within, mm-hmm. to harmonize with that, essentially. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, it is. I'll be the first one to admit I don't do it enough, but I like to think that, and being honest here, that I do it, but not in necessarily a conscious way. In terms of listening, I don't necessarily always sit still, mm-hmm. but even when I'm driving, and I come to the proverbial fork in the road, mm-hmm. I'm just wondering, okay, which way should I go? Not which is the safest way, which is the best way, which is the fastest way, just which way? Mm-hmm. And I've even received the prompting, it's up to you. Either way is fine. Go for it. And then sometimes, nope, make the left. Nope, make the right. And it's without question. Okay, because I don't know if I'm avoiding something, if I'm going into something that I need to do. So that's for me. What are some of the simple rituals for remedy in terms of this whole aspect of soul care, of that inner care for self
Yes.
that we can start with?
Well, I love starting with a very simple gratitude practice. And this is where we can merge what you were talking about as the morning rituals and the evening rituals. We can actually elevate, the mundane and bring it into a place that is more special, sacred, or extraordinary. So by that, upon waking, you could call forward 3 gratitudes, like very clearly. You could even be lying in bed. Instead of going into, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, pause, be still, welcome in nice energy, and call forward 3 or more gratitudes. And science has proven this now, that this shifts the frequency in the body, which then sets you up for more joyful, peaceful, wonderful day, as opposed to the dread. So it's that what I'm trying to unpack in this book is it's about getting conscious. And if the word conscious doesn't work for you, it's like being present. Yeah, just like you were saying, which way am I going to go? And that's because you are attuned to a more expansive energy than just a simple forced agenda. We live in a very high, fast-paced consumerism culture. And so what are we doing on a daily basis? For example, your gratitude practice. Another one could be, being in nature without a distraction of your device, for example, and really just allowing yourself to receive, watching the trees, the wind in the trees, watching the sparkles of sunshine upon the lake, watching the birds, watching the moon rise, being in touch with when the moon is full and when the moon is new. And so these are what I would say rituals that will keep us steady and actually really connected to not only our environment, ourself, and others. Mm-hmm.
I have often, maybe more often than people would like, have said, nature is our greatest teacher.
Yes.
How do we encompass the natural world when it comes to, for example, listening to that still small voice and incorporating some kind of, let's just say, and incorporating that gratitude ritual? And is there anything special that we should do, or is that something that we need to let that inner prompting guide us into, as far as how to create the literal ceremony in that regard?
Well, the first thing that strikes me, or that called to me to share, is that what is your agenda? And I ask that, and it's for me, for all of us. So if let's say you're going to go into nature and you know that it feeds you, because I love to say this expression, what you feed grows. So if you love nature, for example, you love walking in the park, make sure you go there. And the bigger question for me is, what's going on in the mind? Are you stressed? Are you busy? And we all are. We all have big, busy lives, and we've created this, complexity and all sorts of things. And the work that I've discovered over the years is almost as if you're entering another state. So you consciously go, I'm going to let all of that go for now. I'm going to let all of my worries go. I'm going to let my stress go. Because you know what? It's going to be there probably after the walk, but I can just let it go for the next hour. Mm-hmm. And then that conscious choice, what happens is you clear your mind, you attune to something bigger than your worries, your fears, your complexities, the dramas of everyday life. And then perhaps in that moment, you are able to receive the frequency that lives in nature that will become like a remedy over time, because it feels so good that the body says yes, the mind says yes, the spirit says yes. And somehow I believe we can evolve through this towards, our highest self, our true self. And so I really feel there's a lot around how we come into these rituals, or these, nature immersions, or, how I come into a conversation, with my loved ones, even though I've had a really busy day. So it's a lot about like transitions, consciousness, and knowing that you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's interesting, though, is let's say you're going to take that walk. And I would think one thing you could say to the mind, I've always believed, because I remember when I first heard about meditation many years ago, you got to quiet the mind. You got to get this shut up. Almost like, you've got to, beat it into submission and say, shut up and sit in the corner. This is, the kind of thing. Since then, I've come to the realization for myself, no, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that my mind is my friend, and basically say, okay, look, I need some downtime.
Mm-hmm.
You are extremely important in my life. Without you, I couldn't do what I do. Okay, I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for you. So, could you just give me an hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and when I'm done, we'll get back together and we'll kind of process what I've experienced and have some fun with it and that kind of thing. Make a friend out of it. Don't push it away.
Yes.
But the thought that occurred to me when you were talking about going on this walk and kind of letting go of the cares of the world, of the day, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Basically, I also add to that, because basically, and this is at the front end of the walk, they're going to be there at the end of the walk. So why not just let them go? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the walk, even though they might quote unquote be there, it doesn't mean that you're going to have the same perspective towards them at the end of the walk that you did at the beginning.
Exactly. And that's what ritual does, is it gives us a different lens in which to view our life and some of the complexities of our life. And we get to create an energy or a feeling, a vibe that is more expansive, in fact. Mm. And I feel that gives one faith and hope and inspiration.
Mm. I love it. And it's, I want to get this all correct here, ladies and gentlemen, because I've always felt it the height of disrespect when you don't. We're talking a very special woman here on the program, and her name is Mara Bronzecombe. Mm-hmm. And it is a place that you want to spend some time in terms of the website. And that website is, and I had it in front of me, there it is right there. It is marabronzecombe.com. Will be linked to your website. That's MaraBrandscombe.com. We'll be linked to it so that people can find out more about you and the work you're doing, the book that we're talking about here in particular. And we'll continue doing so right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's a pleasure to have Mara Bronzecombe on the program today to talk about ritual. I have a great affinity for ritual and ceremony because of my Catholic upbringing. Mm-hmm. What about you? What has inspired you, not just to write this book, but to be so interested in this aspect of ritual?
Mm-hmm. It all goes back to the moon, in fact, for me, and the moon being my very first memory as a child, the glow of the moon over the lake. And when I then started to study, I didn't have any formal religious upbringing, but what I did have was the gift of nature that my parents provided. And so I spent every summer, really immersed in nature. And when I discovered, when I was, at the young age of 16, my first fire ceremony in the Pagan tradition, I was gifted with a teacher at that time. And I realized actually a way to honor the moon that I had such affinity to, full moon and new moon. The full moon, we work to release what we've been holding on to, and we receive the power of expansion from the full moon. And the new moon is the time where we draw in and we recalibrate our inner self. So it's this beautiful energy of inner to outer self. And it captivated me at a young age. And so then I went to explore and study many, many, many lineages in the ritual tradition.
What I found interesting in your when you first introduced the ritual or the aspect of it in terms of the moon was you said it was a pagan ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought went through me, it's like, kind of wish we could get beyond that and just say, it's a ritual that serves me. I mean, I understand about talking about the origins of things,
Mm-hmm.
but when we start labeling, then people start making judgments not only about the ritual, but then about who we are. And then whether we're worthy and all of those kinds of things. Hey, my salvation as a Christian back in the 80s, early 90s was challenged by some of the ministers because I was asking the questions they did not want to have asked because they didn't really have any answers other than the memory rote ones that they had that they were given. And the answers didn't make any sense to me. So I would continue and I would sort of, I guess you would say, argue. Maybe it was doctrine and dogma, but again, it's like, yeah, but that's what you're basing your whole belief system on is the doctrine and dogma, and it doesn't make any sense, So what are your thoughts about that in terms of just saying, this is the ritual, this is what I call it. Yes, it has its origins in paganism, okay, but it's mine, regardless of what the origin is. And have you ever considered that? And maybe there might be a ritual in some other tradition that you wouldn't pursue because I don't know about that tradition, because that philosophy, it's a little, woo-woo or whatever, You know what I'm saying?
I do. I know what you're saying. And I think that, yes, and we can also get beyond the labels. Absolutely. So I think that we learn so much from especially, specific experiences, life experiences, specific teachers that light us up, studying specific lineages. And that's, I've never been one to say, this is my religion or this is my this. I have always brought in almost like there's this huge basket in front of me. And, and I love to garden also. So the metaphors are rich here. And it's like, what I'm really attracted to is what I gravitate towards. And I honor where it came from. And yet I'm not limited to that. And so there is a vast universal kind of cosmic energy around holding, I believe, and a unification that many of these traditions at their core, have a similar essence, and which is like source energy, love as source, goodness, compassion, beauty, peace, deepening of the self so that one can connect further with the universe. And so, yeah, I feel like we can, when you said you were brought up in Catholic, upbringing, I thought, and that's what brought you your love for ritual. I hear that a lot because you were introduced to these rituals at a young age.
Yeah.
And then they've expanded from there because you've expanded.
Well, one of the beautiful things that I had the experience of was in with my first wife. She was part of what is called the Byzantine Rite of the Catholic Church. A lot of people think it's Eastern Orthodox. It is not. It is still under the papacy. But they were practicing a liturgy that is founded in the Slavonic language, Slovak, which is a Russian dialect. And so I would learn some of these phrases, but I have a hard copy of the liturgy in my library, okay? And if you were to videotape, if you were to record the video of the liturgy, say 30 years ago, and then today, basically, with the exception of the sermon or homily, it'd be the same. It'd be the same, other than, other than the calendar, the church calendar in terms of the various celebrations and colors and this and that and the other. It's one of the things that I found so fascinating. What are your thoughts in that regard to a ritual, and even someone creating their own ritual, letting that inner guidance take over, and then realizing, okay, this really serves me, and okay, so now I have to make sure that I repeat this exactly the same way as I did the last time, because it was so profound the last time. Is that a is that a good way to go about it, or is that sort of maybe going against the flow of the river of spirit, and letting one just experience whatever comes up for that ritual? What's in the importance of continuity versus creativity?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's really up to the individual, because I think some people love to follow repetition, and that really serves them. And other people, probably more like myself, are more creative and more spontaneous, and write a different script essentially for each ritual. And so, and I really think this is what I wanted to unpack in the book, is that I give recipes and formulas for the, full moon and new moon, for, a ritual around each element: earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and how it's connected to our emotions, and how we can do some deeper healing to be the best person we can be on this planet. And I think that, the message that I wanted to bring forward, and the message that I received when writing this book, is that it's for the collective. This book is for people to be able to self-guide and self-heal. And so what does that mean to you? Well, first of all, you got to figure that out for yourself, and what feels really good. So you can follow along with some of the, the formulas and the recipes and these traditions. And then at one point, if it's not wholehearted anymore, if it's not fully coming from you, if it feels like it's contrived, or not, or trite, or not true for you, then that's when you need a shift. And that is, I feel, we are born human form this time around to evolve. What is currently evolving in your personal practice, in your sacred practice? I ask that of myself every day. I wake up and I say, what am I evolving into today? I am here, ready to listen, ready to receive and support. Show me the way. That's another ritual that I do. So I love to unpack these micro rituals. The gratitude practice is a micro ritual, I would say. It's like a quick transmission. Same with that, like praying out loud of, working with the body as really a messenger or a channel for, information to come in and out. And so, yeah, that's what I would say, that the ritual life is a very creative life, and it's yours to create.
Mara Bronzecombe is my guest. We are talking about ritual as remedy, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and I think this is very cool. It's embodied practices for soul care, and we hope that you will stay with us as we continue this particular ritual of Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is such a pleasure to have Mara, and her last name, and this is also the website, Mara Branscombe, and that's MARABRANC, that's SCOMBE. We'll be linked to it. Well, there'll be a link right there on the SoundCloud link or the podcast link, so that you can go to her website and not only get a copy of the book, but find out more about the work that she's doing. You have some special events and online learning that people can do too, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
There's a few courses on my site that one could engage in at any time. It's pre-recorded, so it would be, one is called 30 Days of Soul Care. I'd highly recommend that for anyone wanting to learn. It takes you through, 30 days of breath, meditation, ritual and journal writing practices through videos and journal prompts, etc., audio learning. There's another one I have, Navigate, which is a meditation course based on the elements, earth, air, fire, water, and ether. And then in the fall, in fact, I'm going to have a book club. It's in the works. I'm creating it right now. And it will be an 8-week program, 1 chapter per week. And what's going to be different about this kind of book club is it'll be a little bit of movement and breath, and then the downloads of each chapter. So again, I feel like my mission is to embody these practices through all the modalities.
It sounds like a lot of fun too. And I guess that's one of the other aspects of it. Though we're speaking of the importance of ritual, you don't want to take it so seriously that you get lost in the structure, in the protocol, if you will, right?
That's right. And, all of this really is to keep us balanced, joyful humans. So, then to really look at, well, is that happening? Is the work working? Are the practices working for me? That's that constant feedback that we get, because our body really is the storyteller. So the body keeps the score, right? The body, so you'll get the feedback. And that's why I love personally working with the elements, the 4 seasons. We don't all live in 4 seasons, but there is a rhythm to the fall, to the winter, to the spring, to the summer. The equinoxes and the solstices, they're my big traditions in my home and in my life, in my children's life. And, and then the moon, every 28 and a half days or 29 and a half days, depending on the month, we have an opportunity to connect twice, once at full moon, once at new moon. And it really becomes like the inner compass. It has for me. It's like, I also host events for new moon and full moon. And so you can see those online on my channel too. And it like keeps me steady, present, aware, connected. Also working with the energy of the planets and the stars keeps us into a space like it's bigger than us. It keeps us humble. Yeah, I feel that's the humility about it.
That's a powerful thing. I'm wondering what kind of, and I'm going to use this term, it may not be absolutely accurate, but I'm going to use it because it's the only one I can think of. Have you had, in the context of some of the rituals that you have created and maybe even put in the book, any supernatural kinds of or spiritual experiences that have struck you so profoundly? There was almost like a sort of kind of an instantaneous change in Mara.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, it was the book. It was receiving the message that I needed to write this book. I did not set out to write a book. This wasn't part of the plan. Mm-hmm. I wasn't striving to be an author. And one day I call it a photographic snapshot. So the way my intuition, or I'm learning about my own intuitive nature, is that sometimes I receive photographic snapshots. I'm not saying I'm psychic. I'm not saying I channel this or that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I have received at certain times in my life a quick vision like this, goes that fast. And so if I'm not awake to it, I won't catch it or I won't listen. So the really deep download for me that day was that I was holding the book. It didn't look like this. I was just holding a book, but it was my book. I was against my bookcase in my house. It was so crystal clear that I'll never forget it. And then I thought to myself, oh, now I have to write the book. And also in that message with the book, me holding the book, it said this, for the collective. It just came snapshot and then went for the collective. And I thought, okay, so that means that gives me permission to get out of my own ego, to let go of whether I can do it or not, and then to do the work. And so that's how it happened.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool indeed. And of course, we won't call you a psychic or a medium.
No.
But
just a normal, regular person. Yeah.
Regular American, red-blooded American girl here on Tell Me Your...
I'm Canadian, actually,
Oh, I'm
remember?
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Regular
yeah.
red-blooded Canadian.
Well, and I say that because I think we all have access to this information. And, yes, maybe I had, a yoga practice that morning and done breath work and lit my candle. And so, yes, I had, I am working to, keep my body kind of in a clean state so that I can receive those things.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to listen to them also.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what it takes. And that's what ritual brings us. You know what it does? It gives us a pause in the mundane, and it allows us to expand and to receive perhaps some of those extraordinary moments that we all know and we've all experienced, I believe, in our life at one point or another.
I know that there are times when I feel as though I should do a ritual, some kind of a ceremony for this, that, or the other thing, and I think about it. I don't necessarily physically follow through in the material world. And it isn't enough to just think about it because, intent, that's a wonderful thing. But if you don't take that intent and move forward with it, you're really not. It's like, I have the intent to write my book. Well, I've had the intent to write my book for 21 years. I'm getting closer. I'm looking at a publication date of 12/22/22. So, and I am much closer than I ever have been, and I'm excited about that. But it doesn't do any good. And your intention is a wonderful thing. But you know what they say about intentions, right? They've paved the road to hell for some people. And so it's very important that we do carry through with those. And there is no right or wrong way to put a ritual together.
No, there's no right or wrong way. And again, I always say lean into what you're naturally interested in. So I'm going to give a few examples of some very simple rituals that, one can engage in. Bookend your days with some sort of conscious, generous act to yourself. In the morning, could be the gratitude practice. It could be that you give yourself a task that you're not on your phone right away, but that maybe you're reading text or poetry or something inspirational instead. So that's, I say, we can make our good habits holy. And then in the evening, to bookend your rituals, like, okay, well, how do you go to bed? How do you greet yourself into a nice connected state of I'm ready to receive rest, ready to receive the dream time. A lot of us have very important messages that need to come through the dream time. So proper rest is essential for our health. It's essential. And so looking at what do I do in the morning that's like good for me, what do I do in the evening that's good for me. Maybe you drink a cup of herbal tea, you get into bed, you read something inspirational, you turn off and then during the day, how do you feed yourself? What kind of consciousness are you putting into the food you eat? We can be grateful for the farmers that grew the food, or the animals if you are eating animals. And so it's just a few little tweaks in our day that can bring our vibration up. Also, kindness is a huge thing, random acts of kindness, reaching out to people and not being so, self-driven. All these things grow our capacity, I believe, and can become ritualistic.
Well, I think it is very important for each one of us to create our own unique ritual. There's no question about it. But we sometimes, since most of us have not done ritual before, to have a guide, and you have a breakdown, if you will, sort of some templates. Would that be a right word to use? Some templates to help people to create their own rituals?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about some of these templates.
Sure. So you mean in the book, right?
From the book, sure.
Yeah.
Or outside. Well, I don't.
Yeah. From the book, I mean, it is. So, in the book, the first half of each chapter is prose and text and writing on, the certain topic. And then the second half of each chapter is actual recipes. It's almost like a recipe book. So I just turned to one page and it said the moon cycle. And this exercise is called full moon spirit message. And here's the intention. So this would be done at full moon. This is something actually, it's great that I landed on this page randomly, because this is something I really, 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 truly do and believe in. So the intention, it says to ground your energy, align with the radiance of the full moon, and receive an intuitive message to support you in all areas of your life. So then I go on step 1 to 7 to get you set up for that. So it really is meant to be a support system, these templates, and then you can work with them. So part of this is like, I give this information away. This came through and it was for the collective. So then you make it your own. So on full moon, you may choose rather to moon gaze. That might be your ritual where it's full moon. Even if it's not visible, you go out and you check in and you open yourself to receive. Again, when we let go of the agenda in the mind, especially when we're like, oh, send me a sign, I need it, I must have it, or else I won't know what to do. Like, we've got to get out of that mentality of like gripping and hanging on and thinking that it's like, no. We got to get spacious, vast, and just say, I'm ready to receive. I'm open to receive. And so sometimes we do receive things and sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're deep and sometimes they're simple. And that's, I think, when we take the striving out of it in all of this, we become more steady and grounded. I always say, follow the desire, let go of the outcome.
I think that's excellent. I like the phrase, become a part of the process. Don't try to control the process. Because basically you can't anyway. And all you're doing is frustrating yourself.
Yes.
These are opportunities for us to learn about self. Talk to us about maybe a ritual that would help us to go within and to learn more about who we as an individual are. Certainly the physical body is what it is, but we are immortal beings who just happen to be wearing this particular suit, so to speak. Talk to us about learning about self with the intention of, let's say, releasing the barriers that may be holding us back to maybe fulfilling our life's purpose.
Great big question right there. So in terms of learning about self, what struck me when you were saying that, just off a quick download, is that what if you gave yourself, let's say you haven't done this work before, you're new to it, or you're at a place in your life where you're kind of uninspired. I would say give yourself 14-day mission. If that's too much, go 7 days. I like to work in that number of 7 or 14 days, where you choose a time of day at the same time every day. So a lot of us, it has to be in the morning, because we can, we're still, waking up before work or whatever, where you sit, you light a candle, you be in the quiet space. If you needed a guided, if you need like some meditation to start, if your mind's too busy, sometimes our mind is too busy and we need a little support, that's totally fine. But sit in stillness for at least 2 to 3 minutes. And then, you have your journal in front of you and you begin by writing out first all the things you're ready and willing to let go of. Things that exhaust you, things that frustrate you, things that make you angry, things that you feel you can't control but want to. Then on the other page, then you turn the page and you write all the things you love, and you start to unpack a little bit more about the curiosity. And you would even say, what self is emerging, what self wants to emerge at this time. So a lot of us will connect to some of the dreams and goals and visions we have around this lifetime. So I would say 7 to 14 days of that, lighting a candle, being in intentional space, calm, quiet, writing, journaling. You're going to go deeper every day when you journal the stuff. You might get into some old wounds, some inner child stuff. And then you pull out the positive energies of like, what lights you up? That's what strikes me when you ask me that. That's what I would do personally for myself.
You know, when you say that, it's like when I think about the things that quote unquote light me up, you know, that excite me, that bring me joy or happiness or contentment or even peace for that matter. Things like doing these programs, doing some production for some people, recording books.
Yes.
I produce audibles, for example, and I love that because it's not just the process of the production, but I get to read or listen to somebody else's writing, their story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. As I've phrased it with these interviews, I have often basically put it in this context that these interviews are like Christmas, and I get to open up a package, a present that someone has sent me of you know, just and I get to go into your world and find out, you know, and then maybe there's some things there that might just I might like to incorporate some bits and pieces of that, or a lot more than just some bits and pieces. And but you know, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool that you've been doing this for so long. And I'm curious, does your family participate in this concept of rituals?
Yes, for sure. My daughters, I have an 8 and 11-year-old, and they've been doing this with me since the beginning. You know, I'm also a yogi, so I never put one yoga mat out. I've always put 3, you know, for my daughters. And sometimes my husband, he's, you know, he really appreciates, you know, what I do. He's less inclined to, participate in the way, or to, you know, to activate in the way I do. Like the girls and I have been out there building altars in the forest since before they could walk, and you know, having the full moon energy and the new moon energy and solstices and equinoxes, they know are very, very important to me. And my husband is Jewish, and so he grew up with a very strong ceremonial lineage, and I love, and so we incorporate some of those rituals in. You know, we celebrate Hanukkah, we celebrate Passover, and I love it. So I really feel like it's like the basket of like, you go forward and you do what lights you up, and don't hold back, and express yourself there, because if that feels good, that is generative. It goes way further than we know. The ripple effect is so big. You know, similar as like, you know, I just got off a 6-day retreat, 21 women ages 17 to 70 years old. We worked with the book for that amount of days, on retreat, yoga, meditation, and ritual. It was profound. It was so deep. We did so much ancestral healing. We did so much integration of joy and humor and beauty and love. And can you imagine everyone going home with that new imprint in their body? And then they share that with their family, and then that gets shared around the world.
I love it. I love it, especially the aspect that with your husband. Some of my favorite interviews are with rabbis, for example, and the things that we talk about, because I am aware at a certain superficial level, but still aware of the level of education and study that is required. And I love it. I just absolutely love those conversations. But also the ritual. I've actually wanted to. We do have a few temples here in Santa Barbara, and I've often wanted to attend some of their services, if you will, for lack of a better word. You know, I remember talking with a rabbi about, you know, Hanukkah, for example, and it's such a big deal, and and they said, well, actually, it's actually one of the minor holy periods. It's not as big a deal as you think. It's not like Christmas or Easter.
That's funny.
Yom Kippur is a little bit more profound, if you will, than Hanukkah. But nonetheless, I'm learning, learning about these things, and that's really what it's all about. I have to say that this whole aspect of rituals, I was collecting certain things for this purpose. I would collect these pieces of cloth with certain patterns and so forth that were really very cool. And I would then collect, I have this one candle holder that is actually a coiled cobra that you put a candle in the top of. It's just something I picked up. It's made of brass. I have a brass singing bowl, and various other things.
Yes.
And then I created this small, literally a table that I put together that's portable, and draped the table with the cloth, and then put this and that and the other thing, making it almost look like sort of a Catholic altar in the church or cathedral. And do you find that people do you how do I put this? Do you encourage people to, yes, go ahead and work on the physical form, but don't get shall we say entranced by or distracted by these accoutrements, because that I think can happen too.
I agree. Two things I'd like to say about that. One, I love creating altars. I have many altars in my home. It reminds me of the sacred. I update them. I refresh them. I cleanse the crystals that are on the altar. So that is important to me. And that I encourage people to say, you do not need to go out and buy anything for this altar, or if the altar doesn't work for you, then you don't need it. I like to work with seasonal altars, so I pull seasonal pieces, often that have fallen on the ground or that are reminding me of what is living in the natural world at this time. And that brings me great joy and connection. And so yes, let's not get caught up in, crystals are very popular now, and that all these things are becoming like, this like consumer situation. And we have to be really, awake. And are those crystals that you're purchasing or interested in, are they mined ethically? Are the, the flowers that you're buying, are those ethical flowers? Are those fair trade flowers? So all of this, like every step of the way, we can be guided on this level of, consciousness, and bringing in things that are, have a good, strong energy for us to work with.
It's interesting because the way you describe it, this whole process, on the surface, it seems like all of a sudden it's gotten really complicated, in terms of considering the efficacy, if you will, of the elements that you are using. And it's like, I have a problem with the concept of organics because and this is probably more my ego personality kicking in with this phrase, you can slap a label on anything and call it whatever you want. I just pulled an ear of corn out of the field and I just put a label on it saying car. I can call it whatever. That's a car. Or we had a strawberry grower out in Ventura who got nailed with a fine because they were putting organic on their strawberries. They were putting that label on them, and they weren't organic. That's the problem that I have with this whole aspect of organics and GMO. They don't want to put labels on things when they say GMO. And I'm going, well, what is it that you're trying to hide? What are you afraid of? That kind of thing. So that's why I say now it's starting to get complicated, because so I better grow my own flowers. I better harvest my own honey to make my own beeswax candles.
Great idea. Great idea. Go for it.
And the list goes on, which again is not a bad idea. But you see the downhill slide, so to speak. But at the same time, when you start doing that, after a while, it becomes very easy. Does the concept of muscle testing or kinesiology come into this, or is that more of the inner voice, the promptings, almost immediately telling you, no, I better go to the farmer's market because I know they're grown there ethically and so forth and so on?
Well, I think, for me, no muscle testing. No, I just feel it inside. And I think we need to take out the I should have, or I could have, or I would have, or I must do that, and really go for no backstory here. And if you don't have access to these things and you need to go to the drugstore to buy your candles, go for it. And yeah, if you can get a special beeswax, candle that you love because you love the smell of it and you love the natural feel of it, buy it. There's wildflowers that grow in the summer up in the mountains or wherever you are. And I always just check in, and I don't overconsume. And I, check in with those flowers, and sometimes I bring some home for my altar. So I know I don't feel like it needs to be complicated. And it'll just feel right.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really the bottom line, is you've got to go with that. Some say gut feeling, but and that inner prompting. I have followed it. I remember that an experience I've shared on this program where I used to bicycle everywhere back in Phoenix, and I was going from home in the trailer park I was living in to the transmitter site, and I had to go through like 5 or 6 miles of farm fields, and the farm fields were a 1 mile square. So every intersection, okay, there's another mile, another mile, another mile. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming up to the intersection, and I'm getting the prompt, okay, make a right. Getting the prompting, okay, I want you to make a right here, go up, make a left, then make another left, and then make another right, and then you can continue on your way. I said, I'm not going to do that, taking me 3 miles out of my way. I go half a mile past that intersection, the prompting wouldn't go away. Mm. All right, okay. I turned around. I went back to that intersection, and I went up. Instead of the left, instead of the right, I made a left, and then made the left, and continued on my way. I don't know what I avoided, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought this was not about protecting me. This is testing me. Are you serious about listening to and following the promptings? And that's what I say to people too. If you're not serious, then why are you listening? Please listen. Because I don't believe that still small voice will ever put us in harm's way. It'll challenge us. And there's a difference.
Right. And the difference for me would be intuition versus anxiety.
Yeah. Well,
I just lost you there. I can't hear you.
All right. I want to ask you one final question in regards to what we're talking about here in terms of ritual as remedy. That is the title of the book, ladies and gentlemen. Ritual as Remedy, Embodied Practices for Soul Care. We hope that you will go to the website. And the website just happens to be the name of our guest, Mara Bronzecombe, MaraBranScombe. And she is, of course, an author. She is a ceremonialist. I like that word. That's very cool. Ceremonialist. Spiritual coach, yoga teacher, and meditation guide. Amplifying wellness, creativity, supporting others to live their best life. And we're talking about all of that right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Mara Bronzecombe is my guest. And I have 3 final questions that I like to ask all of my guests at the end of our program, which we are just about wrapping up here. You may have addressed to them during the program, but I like to ask them directly. And I want to first address you, the listener and viewer, and thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, as we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m. We are also on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And we hope that you will listen live at those times at richarddugan.com. The podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher Player, FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, as well as YouTube and the channel, of course, Richard Dugan and Tell Me Your Story. Subscribe so you're notified of new content being posted. I'll post stuff as fast as I can so that you can get the information. That's what it's all about from my standpoint. If you'd like to support the work that we are doing financially, we have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And we ask you to participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s. Spend that time listening to and following the promptings. It's no big deal. It really isn't. I mean, I guarantee you, you're going to feel a whole lot better. I know that when I do, again, I don't know the reason. I don't need to know the reason. I really don't. All I know is that it's a heck of a lot better than, no, I want to go this way, and then there's that anxiety and that frustration, all that kind of stuff. And so just, chill out, okay? With that, we have 3 final questions for our guest. Again, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. First of those 3 questions is, who is Mara Bronzecombe?
Okay. Who am I? Deep question. I am one who loves nature. I am a mother. I am guided by and inspired by mind-body practices, soul care, being in touch and at one with the elements, the seasons, the moon cycle. That's who I am.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you're doing now?
Freedom.
Okay, and finally, what is your life's purpose?
My life's purpose is to guide myself and guide others on the path of sovereignty, freedom, peace, connection, belonging, a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and to really be one with how we can evolve over our lifetime to serve what most lights us up.
Well, Mara, I want to thank you again for joining us here on the program. It has just been a real joy to talk with you, and I hope that we can have you back again to further this conversation and talk about some of the other areas of ritual that we can look into that can take us deeper.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for having me.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast. Love to Lal and Jeanette. I am listening.